Did the federal government make the right decision by denying the CFL a $30 million loan? Let's dive down that rabbit hole. We heard reports late Sunday that the federal government was not going to be giving a loan to the Canadian Football League, which in all likelihood, we'll wait and find out for sure, but in all likelihood means no season this year. Rick Zamperin, this has been going on now for weeks and weeks and weeks. We've been waiting for a result. Did the federal government make the right decision to not give the CFL a loan?
In short, yes. They have put the lame horse down. Listen, aside from the funding elements, this was not a good idea in the first place to hold a shortened season. But considering that federal government money is going to be propping up a professional sports league, optically, it looked horrible. The NHL didn't come with a handout. The NBA didn't come asking for money. The Blue Jays or Major League Baseball didn't do the same. MLS, you name it. These sports leagues have positioned themselves over the past century, really, or decades, to financially withstand these types of instances. And the CFL and, the Board of Governors, the team owners, everyone involved, basically, at the end of the day, has to look themselves in the mirror to say, we should have done better. We should have prepared for a moment like this. And they didn't. And now the league is caught with its pants down. And you can't blame the federal government for not bailing out the CFL. Yes, it's a fabric of our country, but I think there's bigger priorities than professional sports right now.
Bubba?
I think even in the best of times, if this was not even a COVID world that we live in right now, that I would be surprised if the Canadian government would have such a handout, because again, the key word is handout there. You guys are homeowners. It's a business, right? And there's not an opportunity, there should not, I think, in my opinion, be an opportunity to have a handout of that type of money. And I know that there are many in the league and many close to the league that have said that this is a heritage, it's a Canadian institution, and it is responsible for the government to maintain a league like this that provides jobs. But at the end of the day, it's a business and should be run as such a business. There are wealthy owners in this league that have other businesses that maybe help prop up the league. But at the end of the day, funds make any business work or not work. And I think it's up to the owners right now to keep this league afloat for the time being. And I think that's just the only way you can look at it right now. It's a business, and it should be run as such. And if there are mistakes that have been made in the past, well, shame on you.
Bubba, to your point, yes, it's a business. 100% agree with you. Rick, to your point about the season being put down, and rightfully so, I agree with you. In fact, I read something this week that says they may have still lost $50 million. To me, you're running more of a risk of hurting the league long term if you lose that kind of money. And so, yes, I agree with both of you that the government made the right decision here. However, let me put a caveat on this one. This seems to me to be an entirely petty decision by the federal government, even though it's the right one. And the reason is when you are spraying federal money with a fire hose all over the country to the extent of $350 billion, and you can't find $30 million in a loan, what it tells me is you've got a league whose strength is out west, where there are no liberal seats and very few liberal voters. And if the strength of the league had been in Quebec, if the Montreal Alouettes had been the prime franchise and Montreal or Ottawa had come saying, all the people in this city or this region want the CFL, I'm sorry, the Canadian government would have given them the money. Because remember when the federal government got in trouble, when Trudeau got in trouble with SNC-Lavalin, what was his comment? Well, I know it may not have been right, but I'll do anything for jobs. So to me, right decision, but entirely for political reasons. Entirely for political reasons.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, that's really digging down deep into the core of a political decision, and it may just be that, because when you look at the electoral map in this country, there's a lot of blue and a lot of orange out west, and there's not a lot of red. And so, with the strength of the CFL being out west in terms of, the talent pool, some major franchises obviously out there as well. Politically, this could have been you guys can float and or sink. And right now the league is sinking a little bit because, each team is going to be losing an average of about $9 million this year. And for some franchises, that is a whole heck of a lot of money. For others, they can withstand that kind of, fiscal punishment. But at the end of the day, I think optically, the big push behind, the federal government saying no is because it's a professional sports league. If it was just, Joe Blow's whatever industry sector, they probably would have, found a way to make sure that that entity had money. But being a pro sports league, I don't think, the average Canadian would have digested that with a popular scope, knowing that at any given day there could be an election call.
Yeah, Scott, I think you're digging a little deep here. I don't know if this has anything to do with being red or blue, and maybe there are politics for everything that is done in Ottawa or Washington for that matter. But at the end of the day, I think Rick's maybe, at least I'm more in line with Rick here. This is a business. This isn't, Tennis Canada, Golf Canada, or Hockey Canada that's investing money into amateur sports. This is a professional sports league, and as I said earlier, should be run as such. This league has long been not run properly, in my opinion. As you look at the league, even going into this season, it's well over its head. I've said this many times, and we've brought this up a couple of times. Under the structure of the Canadian Football League, at no time should anyone be making an excess of $700,000, $600,000. It is incorrect in the way that is financially run. This league needs to run more like the MLS, or closer even maybe to the NLL, as a smaller, should be more, cash responsible in how much it pays its players. And if the players don't like it, well, they can go play somewhere else, because in my opinion, it's still the second best league in the world. But in terms of financial and long-term stability, this league looks to look at itself and say, how do we set up better for long-term stability in terms of our finances and what we pay our players, and at the end of the day, the salary cap. So to me, this is again, to get $30 million interest-free, no, it started out as $150 million handout, right? It just doesn't work that way. I wish
everything the league has done.
I wish I could ask for $30 million.
Everything the league has done seemingly has sort of whiffed on this one. There's no question about it. Randy Ambrosie, this is not his shining moment. But again, I go to the point that, let's say Toronto was a sea of blue, like Regina, or like the entire province of Saskatchewan is. That team, that the Argos, let's say Toronto, that the Argos meant as much to that city as the Rough Riders do out there, in a vote-rich part of the country that tends to vote liberal. I'm sorry, you would have got, again, Bubba, I'm not saying a giveaway, but a $30 million loan, guaranteed you Toronto would have got that money, or the Argos would have got that money, or the CFL would have got that money if Toronto mattered in the league.
So you're saying that the Liberal government's being vindictive against countries? Not vindictive.
I think they see how much money they've sprayed out all over the country. They see our deficit, and now they're being careful with what they give. And
but Scott, that money,
everything is about politics.
That money's gone to individuals and small business. Is the CFL a small business or an individual? Like, that's where, to me, that's where a lot of this money that's been spread all over the place is to individuals who need money. Small businesses that need money.
We're crossing paths again here, because I agree with not giving the money. I agree with the government's decision. I just look at all the other things across the country where stuff is being spent, and I say, for $30 million of a loan, not a giveaway, this is where you decide to crack down. It seems odd. We've got the We charity right now that has tens of millions of dollars that hasn't been paid back, that there's all kinds of questions about, and it's like, well, we gave them, millions to administer that, and we can't loan. Again, I think there's a lot of things the government should have controlled its spending on. it had to spend money on stuff. There's no question that it had to do stuff to help with COVID. But it just seems odd to me. It seems almost petty that this is the one where you decide you're going to hold the line and not do it. I think this
would have been.
It should have been done a long time ago.
I think it would have been really interesting if the CFL, back in April, when it made its original ask of $150 million bailout, with the promise of, hey, we'll do some stuff in the community, if that was a $150 million, let's just call it an interest-free loan.
Or 30.
Or 30, although I'm not sure 30 million would have done an entire season, because we're talking back in April. There were still plans to possibly kick off on June 11th. But let's just say it was 150 million interest-free loan very early on in the pandemic spending spree. I think there would have been a little bit more of an appetite to say, we'll consider that, as opposed to really shooting it down, because let's not forget there was no player representation at that meeting that Randy Ambrosie was at, or that pitch to the federal government. That was a huge red flag to Ottawa and the members of that committee. It could have been a much different story if this was handled better by the league.
You ever done this, Rick? I don't know if either of you have ever done this with wives or girlfriends or significant others, but you go to the store. I mean, my wife handles all of our money, so, I can't hide anything. And I'll go to the store and I'll go to buy something, and I'll come home and she'll go, how much was that? And I'll say, oh, it was $400. And she'll say, I'm just kidding. It was only 80. And somehow that, that makes it seem better that it wasn't as high. That's kind of what I figure Randy Ambrosie was doing in this case, was hitting them with a shock value off the top, with the idea maybe that we come down later and it sounds better, but it didn't work. If hitting them with the worst case scenario so that the next thing we came back with was not going to sound so onerous, if that was the plan, and I don't know if it was, but it sure didn't work.
Another thing that didn't help the league's cause is that they didn't have a deal with the PA. Yeah. What the Canadian Football League should have done, what Randy Ambrosie should have done, was to say, hey, listen, if we get this amount, this is the deal with the players. If we get this amount, this is going to be the deal. And there should have been several options and several angles they could have gone to if the Fed said yes to one of those, bailout packages or loan packages. But not having that deal with the Players Association, I think, really threw a big wrench into their plans.
Here's the thing, guys. Now they've bottomed out at this $30 million ask. What does that do? In my opinion, at least from what I'm reading and what I'm hearing, that secures the Hub City idea that they want to play this season, the 6-game season plus playoffs. Then what? Are we asking for $30 million again next year? Like, to me, you're looking at a long-term future to now just propping it up for a possible shortened, bastardized season that I'm questioning that even a lot of people will be interested in. And I mean that honestly as a CFL fan, because that's what I'm hearing from some other CFL I'm going to say fanatics, people that are saying, I don't know if I'm into it, really. So
your point.
Yeah, how do you is this going to take care of next year, that we're not doing this all over again?
That's the point, though, is that if you're borrowing $30 million and you're still saying, and there are reports still saying they were planning to lose tens of millions of dollars, okay, how are you, if you're just barely holding your own year after year, a lot of these teams, or losing money, and you're now going way in the hole this year, how do you get out of that hole, Rick, and then continue not to get further into the hole where you get yourself, like, as much as all the things we're talking about, I agree with the government's decision. I don't necessarily agree with the reason for it, but I agree with the decision. This may end up saving the league.
It could, because listen, the reports are the teams are going to lose upwards of $80 million collectively. So that's about $9 million per team. Now you're going to tack on an extra $30 million. So you're asking a little more than $3 million in excess of that per team. There's no gate revenue because fans will not be in Winnipeg. So are they going to sell that much merchandise, that much sponsorship, packages to cover those losses? It's not going to happen. This may be to the benefit of the CFL. I think the federal government may have just given them a huge pass on, financial chaos if they're not already in that. Shuffle off to 2021, reset the energy bar, and let's hope that, the second wave isn't as bad as the first and they can, launch into their season next June.
here's something to chew on, and Rick, this goes back to the pack it up, pack it in, right? Because here, did the owners really want to play this year? I mean, realistically, knowing that all the things that we've talked about, no CBA. I've heard, from insiders that there have been meetings that the owners haven't even shown up to, right? And that's well documented here. We have seen players on Twitter, and this happens in any type of legal sort of labor issue where people are speaking out of turn at times. But it just seems like, how serious have the owners been asking for $150 million that they couldn't have truly believed that they were going to get as a handout, as a repayment of, bullying programs? And I'm trying not to be sarcastic, but really it came off as kind of ignorant in my thought.
Well, how telling was it that MLSE, which has more money than they know what to do with and owns the Argonauts, said, you know what, I don't know if we should play in 2020,
Yes.
not this truncated season, because they're not interested in losing money. They want to make money. So that to me was a really telling position for one of the league ownership groups to say, let's just wait until next year.
Yeah, I think that this could be a bonus for the league in a weird kind of way to not play for those very reasons. You've got some owners that have lots of money, there's no question. You also have community-owned teams, some of which do very well. But if you start talking about the money that you guys are just mentioning of losing, you would probably have burned through most of what you have in the bank. And then you're in a start-over position. And you know what? I go back to what we've said, all of us agree on. This is a good choice by the federal government not to give this money. That's not a knock against the league. This is a good choice. We are at a point in our country's financial history where we need some hard decisions being made about just throwing money everywhere. We're $350 billion in debt for this year. It's a lot of money. We're going to be paying for that for the rest of all of our lives. Why this, though? That's my point. This seems petty. This seems political. This seems like it's not all that important when everything else is getting money. But again, it is the right decision.
A two-part question here. If the Board of Governors, which we're hearing are meeting today and are maybe going to come down with a decision today, we don't know this or not, will we see Randy Ambrosie? And
you mean out in front making a statement of some kind, making a press?
Yeah, no, I'm not talking about statement on CFL.ca.
No, like talking.
Will he be seen? And two, will the CFL blame the government and say we couldn't? It kind of phrase it. I'm not directly blame, but kind of initiate, say that the league could not go on because we could not get the funding. So into the public, that it will seem like we tried really hard to get this done, but our government wouldn't support us.
I think the answer is yes and yes. And maybe even another yes. We couldn't get a deal with the CFLPA as well, and 3 strikes and we're out. I think that's going to be the end of 2020. And we've talked about this, aspect of this whole issue as well, is the integrity of the game. How many Canadians are going to opt out? We already know some American players have opted out, like Ticats superstar Brandon Banks. If they went ahead with this 6-game season, I think it would be so watered down that it would not look like the CFL that we know and love.
I'll answer Bubba's 2 questions this way. To the first question, he'd better have. This is not the kind of moment where Randy Ambrosie can issue a statement from the office and put it out. This is, if in fact, everything we're hearing is true and that they may meet today and they may decide against the season, you have to be out front. And preferably, you have to be out front doing like Doug Ford in the press conference venue, where you can take phone calls from people, not just give a statement on video and then disappear. You have to be visible. As for the other one about whether they'll blame the government, probably. And they won't do it. They'll do it in a passive aggressive kind of way that, again, like you've said, that, we tried, we just couldn't get a deal done. And therefore, boy, we're really sad. We kind of got snookered here. We just can't get any traction. Probably. But what else are you going to say? What else are you going to say? We're a league that's in desperate financial straits, and without a handout, we were pretty much screwed. And oh boy, we didn't get one. So wait till next year when we come back with even more financial problems. I mean, no, of course you're going to try and put it in some sort of context like that. What do you think? Did the federal government make the right choice on this one? Whatever the reason, whether it's a good or bad reason, did the federal government make the right choice by not giving the CFL its loan? Love to hear from you. Our Twitter handles are on the screen. They will also pop up at the end if you missed them. Love to hear your comments down below. Let us know. By the way, subscribe to the video so you can catch these all the time. One of these days, Steve Milton is going to be back. He's up in college, I think, still. He'll be back eventually someday. That's for right now. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you again soon.